Hi everyone, welcome back to Eye of the Stars story. Today we're going to be talking about Kanan Jarrus, also known as Caleb Doom, my personal favorite Jedi, so let's go and jump right into it. First off, we know that Kanan was chosen as Deathblob's Padawan. He got nicked by something while in training one day and was sent to the medical droid by Yoda telling him, doesn't matter if it's small or big, you should get it checked out. So he goes, the medical droid texts him out, he's like, you're not even bleeding anymore. And so he's like, don't come back unless you're dying. But while he's there, he sees Deathblob in a Bacta tank, healing from a terrible mission that had gone wrong. She had lost most of her men. Not all of them, but most of them. So from then on, he was like, okay, I like her. I want to try to get on her Padawan. So he's able to see her training after she gets out of Bacta. She was in Bacta for several months, from what we were told. So she was back to training. And he's able to see her training sometimes and thought it was really cool and immediately was like, okay, I want to be her Padawan. So every single time that she came around, because it came to a point where the council told her, okay, you need to choose a Padawan. So she started looking around and noticed Caleb kind of straight off because he was the talkative one, the one that was not really big on following orders, and like the one that was not very cooperative and always had his own opinions and was told off by multiple people that, hey, no, keep your opinions to yourself. They are not always right, or not everybody always wants to hear that opinion. By most of the teachers that he was taught by in the council, I would like to say, though, he is very young at this moment. He is 11 years old from what it says in the comics, so very young. And Deathblob wasn't sure about taking on Caleb. Like, she liked him, but she wasn't sure about taking him on because of how young he was. Most Padawans weren't chosen until 13 or so. So the fact that he was 11 was a little bit young for her liking. But she does end up taking him on. They are a great duo for the time that they are working together, which I thought was really cool. We get to see them explore what happened, why, because there were multiple explosions that happened in the temple one day. And so Deathblob and Kanan were the ones that Deathblob went out to go look for it. Kanan went with her after was told to stay back. He didn't. He went with her, and they discovered what was happening, which I thought was really cool getting to see that, especially like getting to read that in comics. I really enjoyed the graphics of that and enjoyed reading them. But we also know that Kanan wasn't one to like to be left behind, I guess I could say. Like, he wanted to always be at the front lines. He wanted, like he says in the comics, I hope I at least get to do some fighting before the war's over. He was interested in what happened. But we all know how severely that scarred him in Rebels. He's like, whenever Ezra asks in season 2, he's like, what is even wrong? Like, why? These clones don't seem to be doing anything. What happened? And Kanan is like, and he's like, why won't you just talk about it? And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. You won't understand. You weren't even born. So as much as he wanted to fight as a kid, he didn't realize what war meant, honestly, until he lost his master and he lost one of his best friends. As we saw, he stood over him protecting Kanan after Kanan's master told him not to go do that because it was a stupid idea and he could get severely hurt. He does it anyway, but ends up losing his best friend due to it. So that was really sad, reading that in the comics. But he also loses his master. He realizes that war wasn't just a game. It was an actual thing. He lost his master due to Order 66 and all that. He watched as the clones that he knew that he fought side by side with kill his master. He didn't know who to trust for days, as we read in the comics. For about a week, he was on the streets, no sleep, no food. A smuggler came along, and like they had met this smuggler before, and he didn't really like him because he was cocky and kind of a little bit of a jerk to his master, and he did not like that. So he was not a big fan of it, as we saw. Sorry, I'm playing putty. As we saw, he wasn't a big fan of it. But the smuggler came along and was like, huh. And Kanan got really nervous that he was going to turn him in. But instead, he offers him food and a place to sleep for a couple hours. But instead of letting him sleep there just for a couple hours, he lets Kanan sleep there for 3 rotations. Kanan wakes up, helps him out for a little bit, and then they get and this is all in the comics, then they get the message that, hey, you should come back to the temple. This is not exactly what was said, but I'm just kind of shortening it down. Hey, you should come back to the temple. Everything's fine. We got everything under control. But as we all know, it was a trap. And many Jedi fell for it, but also the Jedi that got. So he asked the smuggler, hey, can we go back? Can you take me back? And the smuggler's like, no, I'm not going to do that. If you want to get back there, you're going to have to find a different passage. You're going to have to find a different transportation, different passage. So Kanan ends up stealing the ship. Just to find out, right before he gets to Coruscant, just to find out that it's all a trap from Obi-Wan Kenobi's message. He goes back, and the smuggler, after some careful consideration with Kanan tries to convince him to let him be part of the crew. So after a little while, he agrees to let Kanan become part of the crew, but he does make some agreements. You're going to have to change your name. You're going to have to get rid of that hideous braid, because that's going to give you away almost immediately, and some other things. So he finally did. So for a while, they just had this thing. I don't remember what the nickname was that he'd given him, because Kanan never thought of a name up until a couple months working with him, and then he finally came up with Kanan. And almost immediately, he got rid of the lightsaber. He put it in a drawer and completely forgot about it and took up a gun, or took up a blaster, which we do get to see used in Rebels, which I think is pretty cool. It's that little blaster that keeps it in his holster. I believe it's on his right hip. So we get to see that, which I thought was pretty cool. But we also know that Kanan completely forgot about his lightsaber, and every once in a while he'd go back through to look at it, but never really used it. He got rid of the braid for a ponytail, and just from that point on, we always knew what kind of happened to Kanan. We never really saw what happened to him in action, like what actually happened to his master in television, up until The Bad Batch, Episode 1. Season 1, we got to see what happened there, although it did vary, because the way that what happened was Kanan's master had taken him up on a ridge and said, I've been slacking on your training, we need to get back to that. So they do his training, they do that for a couple hours, they come back to sit around the campfire, they start telling stories about their day and about different things they had seen the clones were, and one of the clones gets a message from, one of the clones gets the order from Palpatine to execute Order 66, and then it goes over all their radios, and his master senses something that's wrong and tells Kanan to run. She defends them off. Kanan runs back. She's like, don't stand there, run. So he runs. As we saw, he was on the run for 7 days until the smuggler came along. But in the Bad Batch, it was a little bit different. They weren't by a campfire. It was straight after they had just gotten done with a mission, after she was like, hey, where's my backup? And he's like, and Hunter explains to her that we are the backup. This is your backup. So Kanan it definitely went down a little bit differently compared to the comics and the TV show. I know that does happen a lot, just to kind of play with the audience a little bit. But yeah, the way that Order 66 happened was right after a battle that the Bad Batch had helped them win, because they were surrounded and they were running low on men. Order 66 came in, and Kanan runs back to try to help her, but Death Blob's like, no, run, Caleb, run. So he runs, makes it across the ridge, and then I only assume that he went back in hiding up until Rebels. Rebels, we get to see him. I know that Rebels came out way before the Bad Batch. Several years, I believe it was... It was 6 years before the Bad Batch came out. Sorry, I just dropped something. 6 years before the Bad Batch came out. So we know that things were definitely very different, but we still got to see Kanan a little bit. Personally, I thought Rebels was really good explaining his backstory with Hera and all that. He also gets to train Sabine, which I thought was really, really cool. He takes on Ezra as his Padawan. We get to see him be knighted in, I believe it was season 3. We get to see him be knighted while he's at the temple, realizing that he can't always protect Ezra, and he can't always protect his entire crew. So he gets knighted for realizing that he can't always protect him, after the Grand Inquisitor, who was a temple guard, comes back and was like, I have to kill the boy. And Kanan doesn't want that. Kanan's not going to allow that. So as we all saw, though, Kanan ends up getting knighted, realizing that he can't always protect Ezra, which I thought was really cool getting to see that. And then we got to also see that he went blind due to a fight with Maul and 2 Inquisitors. Maul blinded him, Will, at the Sith Temple, after convincing Ezra to use the dark side during that to feed his anger so that way he could lift up the doors that only Sith could lift. He's able to get the holocron, and after that, after that in season, it's either 2 or 3 that he gets blinded. I think it's season 3, or just like the end of season 2. I don't ever remember, so I'm sorry if I got those confused. But we know that Kanan lost his vision, and that after that, Ezra was kind of annoyed because he started using the Sith holocron, and he talks to Hera that Kanan has slacked off on my training. He hasn't paid any attention to me since this has happened. What's going on? And so that was really sad seeing that. I'm sorry, I just got home from church, so I'm kind of tired. But as we all know, it was a sad ending, and I hated watching Kanan's death. Every single time I go back there when I watch Rebels, I'm just always like, no, don't do this to us. I like just hoping that maybe one day we'll have a change of fate. I know we won't, but I always keep that like little bit of hope that maybe we'll have a change of fate, because I did not like his death. I cried. But that's all I have to say about Kanan Jarrus, also known as Caleb Doom. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe, and as always, God bless. Bye, guys.